Hello, Miss Leonie. Welcome to our After Hours series. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited and delighted to talk to you.
All right, thanks. I'm glad to be here. It's good to see you again, Julie.
One of the things maybe you could do as just like a tee up is kind of just introduce yourself. I was doing that before, but I just feel like everyone's kind of
Mhm.
introduction in their own words it's better than I can do you justice around. So
Sounds good. So my name's Leonie Smith. I'm based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I work as a consultant, trainer, and mediator, principally sharing with people principles of nonviolence. I'm also a certified trainer in nonviolent communication, and I bring that work to organizations who are looking to shift their culture, attend to conflict, and just want to be a bit more relational in how they do and realize their shared purpose.
I kind of, everyone loves the GTD story, right? So if you could kind of give us a little bit of the history of how you found GTD or how it found you and
Mhm.
when that was and what kind of prompted you to
Yeah.
kind of get into the fold, so to speak.
Yeah, well, my initial introduction to GTD was like 25 years ago or something.
I think it's before me. I think in our preamble call, I think you said
Yeah,
2001, which is when the first book came out.
yeah. When the book first came out, at the time I was working as an executive assistant at a large company. And so I had a lot, when you're an executive assistant, you're supporting other people. So I
Sure.
had like
Yeah.
five other people who I was
You had five people?
yeah, I had a team that I
Wow.
was a direct report to. And so I had a
Wow.
lot of things to track, and I was looking
Wow.
for something to help me to learn how to track it. And so it was good to have a system in place. And so that was my introduction to it.
And did you read the book? Was that the kind of,
Yeah.
what was the kind of, I guess back then that's what you had, right?
Yeah,
We didn't
yeah,
have
that's
all this.
basically it. Yeah, that's all that you had at the time. So I read the book, and the book was like, it was a bit of a phenomenon back in 2001 at that time. So, I'd read reviews, and so that's how I found the book
Mm.
and read it, and then I started to implement it largely around managing tasks so I could keep track of all the things that I had to keep track of. And
Yeah.
I found it really helpful. And I was using it with a paper planner at the time. And then I've used other systems in the years since, and
Oh.
my work and personal life has shifted significantly, of course, in 25 years. And so I had picked up in like bits and pieces along the years, but then I made a decision in 2023 that I wanted to really learn the system well because I was just dealing with a lot of overwhelm. And I just remember my time with getting things done back in the early 2000s was a time when I felt like I was really on top of things. And so
Mm.
I wanted to I had different needs at
Yeah,
this point, and
sure.
so I wanted to get some support. And so that's how I was reintroduced to getting things done and introduced to you.
Well, that's so great. And it's a really good, it's a great testament to how like sort of GTD kind of it sort of like comes with us,
Mm,
and how it evolve and it has to keep evolving,
yeah,
I love the story about being an executive assistant. I mean, that how your getting things done needs are going to be very different, like
right.
exceptionally different than what you're doing now, which is really multiple roles and responsibilities
Yeah.
across different organizations and things like that.
Mhm.
And, one of the things that I just find very humbling, like, this is all humble pie for me, because it's so, uh, the tools and the skills are so powerful and they're very individual. So, the book is so great. It's like this depth and wealth of richness and information. And yet, we have our own relationship to our perception of that and what we need
Mm,
from it. And, part of why I was really, excited that you agreed to do that is, to just share, because I think there's so much value in when we give ourselves permission to be curious about
yeah.
what's going to work and what's not going to work and not making it. I think I said to you, I think I might have said this to you Leonie, I think people tend to read the book and they have this really good intellectual understanding. A lot of people have read the book
Yeah.
several times. And so this understanding is like really profound. And yet, like the practice is, it has to keep evolving. And
Mhm.
I said, it's like one of the things I'm very aware of is the people's interpretation of what I call GTD pass fail.
Yeah.
They're passing because they're kind of interpreting the book and doing it right, or they're failing because they're
Mhm.
not. And, one of the things, just in the short time that we've been working together, how we, starting in Todoist and and you're super familiar with Todoist. That it's not like that wasn't a learning curve for you.
Yeah.
And how you got really curious about, I'd love for you to share a little bit about that and how now you're kind of more back into a hybrid version with paper and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I was using Todoist as a way to kind of track tasks. And when I started working again with the GTD system, I implemented, after reading like the very detailed guide, Todoist into my GTD system. And it was excellent for being able to move things out of the kind of like the jungle of email
Mhm.
inboxes into somewhere else that I could go and create the different context list and also manage projects. But what I found was that um, even though I was familiar with Todoist and familiar with GTD, um, it's interesting because when I first learned GTD, I was looking for something to manage tasks. So that was my needs, like when I was 25 and 25 years ago. And this time around with GTD, I was looking for ease. I
Yeah,
had a completely
yeah,
different set of needs,
yeah,
and the ease was not there. It just was becoming really hard to manage because, I went from having 5 direct reports to having probably double that in terms of active projects with clients now that I work as a freelancer,
yeah.
as a consultant. And so I found that I was not enjoying the Todoist experience
Mm,
because it wasn't helping me to tap into the part of work that I like.
mm,
And so I needed to kind of slow things down. And so that's why I went to a hybrid system
yeah,
of once again using a paper planner so that I could um, always have a way to kind of test myself to make sure that I'm taking on an amount of projects and taking on tasks that are actually doable and fits more my whole life and
yeah,
not just my work life. And that's a big difference between doing this 25 years ago and doing this now.
yeah,
Is that, well, not 25 years ago, but in 2001 and doing it now, is that I was much more interested in doing a good job, and my job was much more important to me when I was younger. And now my job is important to me, but I have other goals in my life. And so
yeah,
I need a system that looks at my whole life so that I
yeah.
could be taken care of as a whole person.
Yeah, and I want to just comment too on one of the things that you shared in I went back through all my notes, in preparation for this. And one of the things that you said to me in our very, very first conversation it was a very profound way of saying it. And so I'm just going to
Mm,
verbatim if that's okay. You said, is it that I'm not organized enough, or am I um, oversubscribed?
yeah.
Like it's such an elegant, like profound way of saying, which I think a lot of people like they kind of, they're curious. It's like, is it that like I just need more help with kind of getting this kind of
Mhm.
whole act together around GTD? Is that it? Oftentimes, like when we kind of get a better sense of that, then we get a better sense of am I overcommitted? I love oversubscribed. Like it's such a
Mhm.
more fun way of saying that, but
Yeah.
it really is that's where the rubber really hits the road. Like if that's
Yeah.
appropriate engagement. And one of the things that, I think you're working on, that everyone's working on, is like, yeah, work is one area of focus.
Yeah.
I have my health and relationships and, all that. And also just the nature of your work, how it it does, it looks different. Like,
Yeah,
you travel all the time, or some, or you might have a period where you're not traveling, and then you see my experience of you, then you kind of travel
yeah.
and, for like chunks of time, and
Hmm.
how your system has to really adapt to what's present, and just to all of that, and really giving everything your
Yeah,
appropriate focus.
yeah. So true. I mean, one of the things that became really clear in our time working together, it was that if I wanted to work towards goals around having a whole life, so I had some particular health goals and stuff that I needed. Um, what I needed to do was to figure out how to make time and energy
Yeah,
for all of those things
yeah,
to be present. And it was no longer about being able to tick off boxes, because these are goals that I associate with my identity and the
mhm,
values that I have and
yeah,
all of those things. And so it just became more meaningful and important. Um, and so I was able to actually get to that place of answering that question of being oversubscribed, because what I realized, for example, was that, oh, when I travel, I actually don't have access to certain things. And so I'm less resourced when I travel. And so I need
yeah,
to adjust the things that I'm doing,
yeah,
so that I don't get into that place of overwhelm. Or perhaps I need a different mix of client work, because if I'm overly invested in kind of high touch client work, that means then that I don't have time to look after my health, or I don't have time to, read
yeah,
a book for fun, hang out with friends, and
yeah,
stay connected. And so I was able to answer those little questions along the way,
yeah.
and I'm still in the place of discovery and exploring
Well,
those
and
things.
I love that, like your attitude, and I really want to point this out. It's like this playful curiosity. Like it's, I think some people like they kind of try to grind it out and figure it out. And, like maybe you have a little bit of that, but you didn't really share that with me. To me, my experience is like, okay, like let's try this. Like, you're just so willing to run experiments. And I know, especially around like because you have really rigorous routines in the morning.
Mhm,
And,
mhm,
it's like one of the things I think that a lot of people look at is like how much time I actually have on a given day. I have meetings and, those kind of hard edges, and then I have the threefold nature of work. And
mhm,
it's, I think for most people, inbox processing, that's something that we have, like, we can kind of predict around how much energy it takes and things like that. But tasks are different. Some tasks are very cognitively, loaded, and some aren't. And so your ability to really look at kind of on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, like how to take everything into consideration and feel good about that has just, I think it's just a great model for that, just like that
mhm.
willingness to be curious.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what the answer was, and so I felt good having the support to be able to like experiment with things and being like, you
Yeah.
know, I'll move my weekly review to, to this date instead of this date, or
Yeah.
or getting
I
even
was going
like
to say that. Yeah. Your
exploring
weekly
like
review.
ideas with you, like split the weekly review up so that it gets done like within like, a 24-hour period, because some things take a lot of brain power and some things don't, and it
Yeah.
might be too much to do. So the experimenting part is really important,
Yeah.
because you're learning really, for me, I need to learn how to take care of my whole self. And
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
was a
And
thing.
all the nuance and the variability in that. Because
Yeah.
it's okay. I'm going to kind of just, if it's, can I share a bit about your Kairos?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because, this kind of dominantly associative preference, also that's another factor, right?
Hmm.
Like in terms of that preference, like you can, your way, your intelligence and wisdom and intellect can do all the sequential stuff,
Hmm.
intellectually, but like figuring out, how to do that, when to do that. And, you've also just been really, really willing to cooperate with that too.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely been a discovery process, and not only about like the what, but like again, like the attitude and the lens that you bring to it, that like these are not like faults that you have as an individual, they're just things that you need to learn.
Yeah, like
Um,
it's like
and it
wow,
can all
like
work. Yeah.
Yeah, this is me. Like, it's sort of like, yeah, how do I bring GTD to me?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's the only question that matters really in all of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And just having, if we can have a little fun with that. And also just like sometimes it is hard.
Hmm.
Sometimes something happens, or, we have a tough week, or we didn't sleep, or all these things, like just to factor all of that in and make everything, you know, just kind of more playful curiosity.
Yeah. One of the things that I've enjoyed is that the system itself has shifted and become more loose and flexible over
Mm,
time. And
mm,
that's been really essential because it's not just about learning around, these are the 10 steps to like getting things done. I mean, obviously, those things exist, but it's about really figuring out what it is that you want to bring to this process. Actually, understanding what you are bringing. What
mm,
relationships are you bringing? What, um, if you have like health issues, if you have like ADHD,
mm.
all of those things,
Yeah,
is to make room
yeah,
for all of that in the exploration, rather so that you can actually use the tools to support you as you are, rather than trying to mold yourself into the perfect person who does
yeah. That's so
everything.
beautifully said. I want to just like put that on a quote board somewhere.
Well, I think that the thing that I am just so like appreciative of is that um, I would invite people to consider getting support, at least initially, if you are struggling with figuring out how GTD can work for you, or figuring out how to deal with overwhelm. Um, I found it to be like essential because there's a lot of decision making up front, and that can
Mm.
be fatiguing. So, and I also would say, I'd encourage people to kind of like go at your own pace. Like it wasn't like, it's my learning trajectory has not been like, a straight line up. It's still ongoing. And as you said, things showed up, sleep issues and other issues. And so really to take your time with figuring out how to have a system that really works for you. So that's the two things: support and slow things down enough to let the learning sink in.
Amen. That's awesome. That's just super supportive. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your loving presence, and just for sharing all of this. It's going to be super helpful for people, and I just really appreciate it.
For more GTD resources, please visit gettingthingsdone.com and David Allen's YouTube channel. For more information, please email us at info@gtdfocus.com or visit our website gtdfocus.com/contact.